Olá, pessoal. Hoje é dia 28 de janeiro de 2025, são 10 horas e 10 minutos na capital federal do Brasil. E a gente está vindo aqui para mais um encontro aqui no ambiente da Questel. E no nosso encontro de hoje a gente tem ninguém menos que Tony Afram. Tony Afram, ele é criador do Qthena, uma das primeiras ferramentas comerciais no mundo da propriedade intelectual para profissionais de propriedade intelectual a alcançar o mercado global, né, numa parceria aí da ipQuants com a Questel. O Tony Afram, ele é fundador da ipQuants, a empresa parceira da Questel, e nosso encontro de hoje, como eu já comentei, né, um pouco antes de iniciar a gravação, a gente vai ter alguns blocos aqui no nosso encontro. No nosso primeiro bloco, a gente vai ter uma apresentação, né, do Tony Afram, primeiro pessoalmente, depois a gente vai falar um pouco sobre a própria história, né, da concepção do Qthena, da fundação da ipQuants. Vamos falar um pouco sobre uma ferramenta específica, que é o Qthena, e depois disso, e junto com isso, mesclado com tudo isso, a gente também vai ter uma conversa sobre o ambiente global, sobre ferramentas de inteligência artificial e de produtividade aplicado ao mundo da propriedade intelectual, né? E só um outro comentário adicional aqui nessa fase inicial que a gente tem, depois dessa nossa apresentação de hoje, a ideia que a gente tem é de nós agendarmos períodos de teste, né, para a gente colocar a mão na massa mesmo, em ferramentas como o próprio Qthena, e de uma forma bastante organizada, tá? Então, esse aqui é um primeiro passo de uma jornada, que inclusive começou no ano passado, quando a gente viu o Markify, né? E a gente vai poder ter oportunidade de ter essas interações, tá? Então, ao final da apresentação do Tony, né? Nessa fase gravada, ainda a gente vai estar com os microfones fechados, né? E eu vou pedir para a gente usar muito o chat. E depois, na parte final, a gente vai ter ali uma parte de perguntas e respostas, primeiro guiadas, né, por meio do chat, e em seguida a gente vai para a gravação e a gente vai ficar num ambiente mais descontraído para a gente poder interagir, tá ok? Vamos lá então. So, Tony, I know that you
Okay.
understand everything I said in
Every
Portuguese.
little word, yes.
Yes, yes,
I
every
think it's my
single word.
turn.
Yes, so
Okay.
now, okay, so now with us, as I commented, we have Tony Afram. Tony, as we talked before you really entering talking about ipQuants, Qthena,
Yes.
it would be also good to listen to you to introduce who is Tony Afram, and then
Yes.
my first question would be, what led you to really create ipQuants and create Qthena? Okay, so Tony, now the microphone is with
Thank
you.
you. Yes, thank you very much. Thanks for this kind introduction. Thanks for everybody for participating. Henry obviously asked me to talk a little bit about myself before we get started, so I'm happy to do so. So I have some bullet points here on the slide. You can see them later in the recording. But basically, I'm an engineer. I grew up in Sweden. I'm a mechanical engineer by training, became a European patent attorney. I qualified back in 2007. I started in the profession, however, back in 2003. I started my career with a law firm in Germany called Grünecker and Partner that some of you might know. And after spending my time at Grünecker, I moved in-house, and that's how I ended up in Switzerland and started to work for Tyco Electronics. It's a global electronics manufacturer. Did a lot of contract work, strategy, and then ultimately got recruited away to a company called Leica Microsystems. It's part of the Danaher Group. It's a company that many of you might know from microscopes. And I was ultimately, honored to lead the whole IP division there around the world, became the chief IP counsel. And of course, during all of this time in-house and previously in law firms, I saw a lot of problems, right? And they frustrated me. One of the big problems I saw was in the US, they started to use data to inform themselves, like examiner data, to take decisions. And we didn't have examiner data in Europe. So we actually set out, and then I found my co-founder, Gianluca Tarasconi, who was quite well known in the academia. And we created the first data set on European patent examiners. And that's how it started. When we thought we could do that, we basically figured, there's so many more issues I saw. And you see this is on my image here, like all of the paper that was going around, right? And you have to remember that when I was leading the department in Switzerland, I was the only person of the IP team in Switzerland. The rest of my team was in Germany. And you can envision me sitting there and they would send me boxes of files by courier, DHL, FedEx. And I like, this is madness. I like, this has to stop. And then I tried OneDrive, Dropbox. I tried to really plug together everything, but it became a monster. I like, okay, this will not work. And so I figured there are probably a lot of people like me that have this problem, right? And I was lucky enough to, I was earning good money, and I was lucky enough to have a very understanding wife, and that said, okay, you can spend this money on this idea of yours, but don't spend all of it. Of course, I spent all of it and more, but we're still together. And at some point I realized, okay, let's stop working as a chief ipQuants. So I resigned in 2018. I found a little bit of angel investment and started. And this is now almost, 7 years later, 20 people approximately at ipQuants today. I think all of the big European patent law firms are using our tool in one way or another, if it's the data or the cockpit. And together with the Questel partnership since last year, we're scaling around the world at this point. So that's a little bit about myself.
Okay, Tony, so it's good to know that. Pessoal, só para falar um pouquinho em português agora, né? O que eu achei um barato, né, de conhecer a história do Tony, né? É que o Tony tem uma carreira toda, né, dentro do mundo de propriedade intelectual, como ele comentou, né? E, cara, eu não consigo imaginar, né, que ele falou, né? Tá lá na Suíça, fica recebendo caixas e caixas de papel pelo FedEx, pelo DHL, seja lá o que for, né, para poder trabalhar. E depois abrir todas as áreas de trabalho e tudo disso, né? Naquele mundo que estava ali para trás, né? E mesmo depois, né, no mundo mais online, quantas coisas, né, a gente tem também, né? But okay, Tony, thanks for your kind introduction. I was just making a comment that for me it was really great to know about your background and Tony, are you a lawyer?
No, as a patent attorney, we're engineers here. So
okay.
we became master degrees in engineering. Then we have to work for 3 years in a law firm and then can qualify as patent attorneys.
Okay, great, Tony. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, then I think I get started with the presentation. I think you outlined before. So I will try to introduce everybody a little bit deeper to the problems we see, how we try to tackle and solve them. Then I will go into a segment, basically what it means to focus on quality, how important it is to be transparent to the user, what is possible and what is not possible yet, right? And then I'm happy to take your questions at the end.
Okay, great.
Thank you. So Qthena, it's a simple name. The question always comes up at what is it? And remember, when we launched the first version in 2021, people were like, I don't need a digital assistant, right? Today, the world looks very different. And we always felt that this type of solution was needed. Out of the gate, what's different from us between maybe a Microsoft Copilot or ChatGPT? We really build a unique cockpit around Qthena. We don't just use a plugin in Word or a plugin in Adobe. And I usually like to joke these days, we're the only Copilot solution where we gave the Copilot a cockpit. And I've never seen a pilot not having a cockpit, right? So I think it's really important that you give a tool a cockpit, and this is what we have done. So the background, I think I already hinted towards introducing myself. A lot of people, I mean, they still work with a lot of paper today, and not because they don't know there's a better way. It's just because they tried maybe to work digitally, but then this happened. Right? They get all of these PDF panels now that they reorganize all day long. Of course, it's understandable you go back to paper. It's less frustrating, right? And the reason why this doesn't really work out of the box is because your patent or IP workflows or R&D workflows are very complicated. They were not meant to be solved by a simple off-the-shelf tool like Adobe. And the other thing that really happens when you sit next to these people working in the IP R&D industry, you will realize, actually, it's not just about reading a paper in Adobe, many times you have to jump into OCRing maybe the paper. That's a simple one. But then you realize, oh, I need a translation. So you need to find another tool. So you're jumping into a translation tool. Often in the legal industry, you will then realize, oh, I wonder if there's a family member of this. Then you do a search. So you keep jumping around between tools. So I like to call us for professional tool jumpers, right? So you're getting paid for switching between tools all day long. And of course, the big problem here is now when a new tool comes, a new technology comes, you all go start looking for a new solution to buy, right? Another login. And the best example is the generative AI now. Everybody's kind of curious. Okay, I need a new tool. Of course, when we launched Qthena in 2021, we already promised that we want to create one solution that can do all of these things. And this was the vision with Qthena. Could there be one platform that has all of the tools, but also all of the data, right? Because if you have all of the tools, then you start working and you realize, I need to now import my data myself. And then you waste your time. Then you start looking into no-code automation platforms. But is there something that ties everything together? So this is what we try to do with Qthena. And of course, our users back in 2021 that joined, when generative AI became so good that it could be used in production, we just added it. They didn't have to go find another tool. Suddenly, they got an extension of their subscription and they had it automatically inside. Same UI, same customer success team, nothing new to go learn. And because we do all of this, we let our users focus on the following. You can focus on your workflow. You don't have to worry so much about, oh, I need to do a search with this tool, or I need to do an office action review with that tool. No. We can then build workflows from beginning to end and ensure that all of the tools, data is already integrated. And we will show many deep examples later on. So this is how we look at Qthena. We train Qthena with all of the workflows you have. Remember, at ipQuants, we're 19 people. So I'm just, I know a bit of patent law, of course, but we have many paralegals that used to be law firm paralegals or in-house paralegals in patent and trademark. They give a lot of input. Then, of course, we have the data expertise, and then we have the AI and the software developers. So we can basically mimic every workflow you have and automate it. And we're doing that one by one. Now, in the first phase of the company, we focus a lot of patents and R&D workflows. You will now this year also start seeing trademark workflows coming to the platform. So let's also just talk about some of the basic use cases before we then go into real examples on how Qthena can assist you. So first of all, what's the cockpit? What do we mean? So we mean you log in a browser-based solution, you download nothing, you install nothing, any browser. You could be in the office, log into a browser, you can forget your computer in the office, you log in at home, you continue from exactly where you left off. Anything you do inside of the cockpit, you can arrange flexibly in a grid layout. Left, you could think about this like a GPT-powered chat, a generative AI-powered chat. But because we've built a unique user interface, you can actually arrange a PDF side by side. Now, this is still very important today because, as you know, you need to verify the output of any generative AI solution still. In tools like Microsoft Copilot, ChatGPT, you would need now to find Adobe and have the PDF side by side. You don't have to bother with this in our solution. Actually, you could even mark an output from here in blue is the generated answer of Qthena. You could even highlight a part of the answer and ask the tool to show you where in the PDF this is supported. You can arrange, of course, two different documents side by side. You could have the search opinion left, the prior art D1 on the right-hand side, of course. And Qthena will remember the state. So if you took the effort to find this part of the examiner, and of course, everything I say now works the other way around. The examiner could do the same thing, right? The examiner could see, okay, the lawyer sent me this response. You open up the document, you see If I now get a phone call or get interrupted, I can log out, close the window, no problem. We even save the scrolling state. You will next time when you come back to the same project, continue from exactly this page and this arrangement. In fact, if in 6 months you get the second office action, you log in again, you see exactly where you stopped last time. All of this 10, 15 minutes, find that document, open the document, arrange it again, is gone. And this is particularly appreciated by smaller teams, but effectively also in big law firms, everybody's measured on their own. So everybody will save time and it adds up. Of course, we can bring different type of data, as I already hinted. So on the right-hand side here now, many of you know Espasnet or Google Patents and the like. It's also not needed anymore to navigate the way to a tool like that, because Qthena has what we call the patent viewer. So if you are reviewing a document like this and you're like, oh, I want to open up another document, you can just stay, go into the patent viewer and retrieve any patent you like. In fact, if you type in the publication number of an EP of a European, a USPTO, German, or a PCT case, we will automatically import the prior art cited in those cases. So what you see here, there's a list of different patent numbers, and you see there's D2, D1. This is how we often do it at the European Patent Office. This is automatically named like this by Qthena. The user doesn't have to do this. So not only does Qthena bring all of the documents, load all of the prior art and the family members, it can also name them for you if it was able to identify this from the file. So all of this is like basic concepts that we figured out that everybody does. And it doesn't really matter if you work in a law firm on patents, in an R&D department, or in a corporate department. So let's talk about more what it is really you can now do together with Qthena when you review documents. So here on the right-hand side, we have a complex drawing. At the face of it, I think we would all agree everybody would need like 5 to 10 minutes to really understand what are all these dots, what is meant, and so on. But with Qthena, you could simply ask a question. What is meant by figure 3? I'm just enlarging it. I have a team meeting and I need to explain in a clear and concise manner what the teaching of this chart is. Pretty much how you would speak to a colleague. And this is the first secret, how you should collaborate with AI, generative AI. And really, Henry and me look at this more like an educational session also. Like, of course, if you're interested in our tool, great. But I really want to convey, even if you use a fantastic tool like ChatGPT, which if you haven't tried yet, of course you should, right? Just to be aware what's happening. Remember, don't treat them as tools. They will work better if you treat them as humans. And I know it sounds weird and, it takes some, you need to jump above some hurdles to feel really comfortable. I know, but trust me, the results are better. When I do demos to our customers, I would even explain if it's the second office action, I would say, the examiner has been really stubborn on this feature. This is the second office action. We really need to get something granted now. And I explain the context, right? The tools will perform better if you do that. Of course, in order to make that easier for you, we have been thinking a lot, how can we make it more convenient? So we have already integrated for users speech to text. So I can literally just speak in what I just explained to you. Because if I always have to type so much, we're all a bit lazy. That's the first. And it will also take a lot of time if I always have to explain all of the context. So I could simply just use speech to text to talk my prompt. And of course, Qthena can also see. So Qthena can see. I don't know if you noticed, but I only said, what does this figure 3 mean? I did not explain anything. And here's the answer already in blue. So Qthena uses inherently vision skills and voice skills when you interact with it. Those of you that have used ChatGPT or similar tools, I'm sure when you've tried, you've already about prompt engineering. But you notice that we just said, what does the figure show? So in our tool, you don't have to worry about prompt engineering. What we do is we give Qthena different skills, as we like to call it. So here's a list of some of the skills Qthena had. So maybe you select a EPO examination skill. So basically, you're asking Qthena to act like a patent professional with European knowledge. If you now would ask Qthena a question about novelty or inventive step, Qthena will reason and act. I think at this stage, like a 5-year experienced patent professional. As the tools get better and as we can push the limits, I think we will soon be able to have like a 15, 20-year type of experienced patent professional always available to you in real time. And this is really how fast it is going. Remember, we use API access, so a software direct access to both OpenAI and Google at this point. Our users don't have to worry about what is the best LLM. We don't care. We will find it. We are not married to neither OpenAI nor Google. Whoever delivers the best LLM, we will integrate into our tools. But we are very strict. For example, Google Gemini, we only integrated in December. So 1 month ago. Up until then, it was not performing the way we would like it to perform. So if any of these open source tools that you read about, etc., really starts showing real benefits, we will integrate them. We are not in the business of optimizing for the sake of optimizing our internal costs. We're in the business of optimizing for your quality. And I will explain this later on what this means. Everything you can do in our tool, the way we look at it, we create a first-grade draft. There is no promise from our side, and I want to be really clear because I see a lot of other companies out there that try to say this. There's nothing in our tool that you can click, download, and submit. Doesn't work. The AI is not there yet. And we're going to tell you it's not there, full stop. There is no, and there are some things you can't even do because we don't want you to give a tool to do it, because we know you will be disappointed. So we are very clear to our user what works and what doesn't, and what the limitations are. I think right now, the way to look at these AI tools is they do a first-grade draft. They probably do 60 to 70% of the work you usually do. So you now just need to come and complete the last 30 to 40%. This is where we are today, in our opinion. But it's going really fast. I do not think it will take 20 years until we get to 90, 95%. But I also can assure you that at least the way we look at the world, we will always have the human in the loop. So we actually force the user to click 2 or 3 times, actually for no reason other than making sure there's a human controlling the AI. Right? Because your organization needs to feel secure that the employee is in charge, not the tool. Okay. So, of course, another thing that you realize when you do this in-house, like I did, or even in law firms, you have to collaborate. There's really a workflow that you do on your own 100%. Either you need to reach out to the inventor, or you need to reach out in a law firm. A partner works with an associate. So the partner, she will tell the junior associate, hey, can I look at the draft, at your analysis, and so on. What happens in 90% of the cases, I'm not doing a poll here, but I would assume people would say, here's an email with 5 PDFs, can you have a look? Right? Or there's something in SharePoint, please go have a look. But actually that doesn't make sense at all, because when I review this document, so here's an example, when I review this chart, and I need to understand what each quadrant A, B, C, and D means, I will go and scroll to a part of the document where this is explained. If I now need you to comment on it, why should I just send you the raw PDF and you have to open everything yourself again and arrange everything yourself? With Qthena, I can simply click share. And when you enter the project, you see exactly what I prepared for you. So there's no time wasted on the collaborator side just to get started. So let's go into more patent-driven workflow. Let's start with invention disclosures. It's a big problem everywhere. I'm certainly one of them that have seen this. You get one line, this is my invention, and then somehow magically we're supposed to draft a patent application of 20 pages, right? So there's already great help for in-house people also. And when I used to be in-house, we had training sessions, how to fill out a great invention disclosure and so on. So Qthena is actually in real time interviewing whoever submits this invention disclosure. So again, we can look at a bit larger. So it starts with the tool starts, I invented something. And the output here in blue is Qthena, so the tool. Okay, great, I'm happy to help. Can you describe the concept? And then the user could say, I don't know, a shoe with a heating system is my example here. And then Qthena will start step by step populating. And after interviewing you, and of course, at some point you could just say, I don't know more than this. Just you complete the rest, please. And then Qthena will always come up with a structured title, existing solution, what's the drawback, problem solved. Even if you do not mention a drawback, Qthena will draft a drawback statement. So this is the magic here a little bit. Again, Qthena is like your personal assistant. If you don't know anything about the drawback, here in this particular use case, we instruct Qthena to be creative, to find the knowledge outside of the document you provide, because you need a real collaborator here. If you don't want this to one sentence, you want more, you can just say, hey, I need more, right? But by default, we force the tool to be clear and concise. What we also need to avoid is to draft like 5 pages, because then you will tell me it took me longer to correct this thing than doing it myself, right? So this we also need to avoid. So it's very easy. Just like when you collaborate with a colleague, you're like, hey, yeah, it's a good first, but why don't you go back and draft a little bit more? The difference here, this will happen in real time, 30 seconds later, 60 seconds later. So that's one of the skills Qthena has right now to help you on invention disclosure. Of course, once you've done your invention disclosure, you go to patent drafting, right? So there you can stay in the same tool. It's just selecting another skill. And in the patent drafting, again, Qthena can see and you can speak to it, which makes it really intuitive to focus on the concept. I mean, at least I'm old enough that when I used to work in the law firm, we would dictate patent applications all day long, right? I think some of us still do it today, but we were never allowed to type ourselves. We had to dictate just looking at the drawing and focus. And that feels really convenient. Now you can do the same thing. So in this example I'm showing you, the only thing Qthena was given was drawings, no text in the drawings, and a short description that I have a shoe with a heating system and a temperature sensor. That's it. No explanation what the reference signs mean and so on. And because I told the tool my core inventive feature is a shoe and a temperature sensor, Qthena will then instantly try to draft a claim based on my instructions. Of course, we all know shoe is not a great term to use for patent application like this. But I started like this just for the demo purposes. But then I came back and said, hey, actually, could you review my notes in my playbook document? So a playbook document is what we call in the tool a PDF file that Qthena will see. So you can add into this playbook document your hand sketches, your drawings, but also your internal guidelines, how you want patents to be drafted. And then when you chat with Qthena, you can just reference the playbook document. Qthena will go inside of this document before it responds. So I basically said, the inventor told me temperature sensor and the term shoe, but what about if we abstract the concept? So now you see I'm collaborating here with Qthena. Again, I'm just trying to get across how you should really interact with these type of tools. Because even when you sit in a team meeting with your associates or with a colleague, you sit and brainstorm like this, right? This is what we try to mimic. So I like, what else could we say instead of temperature sensor? Could we use a different terminology? And then Qthena, yeah, sure. So let's use footwear device instead of shoe. And what about sensing unit instead of temperature sensor? Detect environmental conditions, because of course, instead of just detecting the temperature, maybe you want to detect later the moisture inside of the shoe as well. You see, And all of this I'm showing you here, this was triggered at 11 minutes and 19 seconds and came back within 30 seconds. So we have a timestamp. And then you can jump around. You don't have to do the patent drafting in the order, that usually is done. Everybody does this differently. You could have started with the drawings, actually. And actually, you don't need to use, so what we've seen the first users, they don't draft the full patent even sometimes. They just prepare very good invention disclosure and send this to the law firm. Because now they've already done the initial brainstorming. Qthena wrote everything up, and they can send this out. So let me show you this example here. So we just need to remember again that Qthena did not get any text description of the drawings, did not get any insights about what 116 and so on means. So when I told Qthena here, please, can you draft a brief description of the drawings? We have the text. It says figure 1 is a perspective view of the footwear device. And this is figure 1, which I gave. It is actually a perspective view. But I never gave it any text that said, hey, figure 1. So it clearly can see. And it does this with each drawing. I'm going to move fast. This is being recorded, so you can go back to it to verify yourself later on. But let's maybe stay quick on figure 2. It says an exploded view of footwear device. This is a figure 2. It's a clearly exploded view. So even if you don't have domain expertise, etc., challenge Qthena to help you understand the concepts in the drawing. It can. Because the way we create these skills, the way we do the prompt engineering, that you don't really see and never have to bother with, we force it to be an assistant, not only on legal topics, but also on technology topics. So in figure 6, for example, it says a cross-sectional view of the toe region showing the placement of the sensing unit. So the only thing we said before to it in the setup was this black line is the temperature sensor, 800. But we never told it in which drawing it was. And as we just saw in the demo, we renamed the temperature sensor to sensing unit. Notice how it says cross-sectional view. This is a cross-sectional view. It sees the toe. So unlike other tools in the market, they can see an image, but what they usually do out of the image, they make a text description. They use the text description to search. We have optimized the system to use vision only in order to do this, right? And then the remaining figures. So this is basically how you can interact with Qthena to do patent drafting. So after you've done your invention disclosure and your patent drafting, what's next? Your prosecution, right? So in prosecution, I showed this quickly before, we have built-in skills that Qthena understands the guidelines of the EPO and the guidelines of the USPTO. So I can simply say, draft me a response letter to the office action. And again, everything we do is iterative. You notice this right now when I showed you the patent drafting. We didn't just give you the whole patent draft. Doesn't work, doesn't make sense. It's not how we work, right? You want to step-by-step review it and build it together with the tool. But here, I can say, provide a novelty argument and an inventive step section in the response letter you're drafting for me, please. And I will not read everything, but what I'm trying to highlight here, we never tell the tool what's the objective technical problem we're solving, and we never telling the tool certain aspects that is a must-have when you draft an inventive step argument. So if we focus on the inventive step argument, the so-called Article 56 at the European Patent Office, you see here that Qthena will write that an inventive step chapter, and it looks and feels like how patent professionals would do it, right? It will say, okay, the closest prior art is, and will also justify why. But I never told it that this document is the closest prior art. Qthena knows if you don't supply certain information, it has to draft this section. The only thing I said in my instruction was start from this document DE and argue that I'm inventive. So Qthena understood, okay, he meant that this is his closest prior art document. I never mentioned what an objective technical problem is. I didn't even mention the technical problem at all. But Qthena knows this has to be defined. in my reasoning of inventive steps. So it creates its own technical problem definition by looking inside of my application. So in the patent prosecution skill, unlike the invention disclosure, unlike the patent drafting, we force Qthena not to go outside of the prior art, not to go outside of our application, because that's very dangerous, right? So of course, we know this is not okay because we have deep understanding of the workflows ourselves, but we also put mechanisms into the tool that you can feel sure about this. If you would start asking it things about the document, Qthena would that are not supported by the document, Qthena would at some point say, sorry, I cannot help you here. Please ask a relevant question. With ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot, you don't know when it goes into the internet and fetches the answer sometimes, right? And it's very dangerous. That's why you can't use tools like that out of the box for professional use cases. And of course, for the USPTO, Qthena understands 102, 103. So now even you, even if you're not, a practitioner in these regions, can, when you get a draft, work faster, more convenient to support your foreign counsel better by having a tool like this available to you. So same here at the US, I want to file a new claim set. Please prepare response to the office action. That's it. That can be enough for you to trigger an argument to be drafted like this. So here's a rejection. Everything you see here comes out of the box. Qthena drafts this exactly like this. Nothing was altered by the human here. If you want more or less of something, you can just instruct Qthena to do it. So everything we talked about so far, we like to call it the chat functionality, real-time interaction, right? But as you know, there are many, many use cases where you don't really need a real-time answer. So one example is portfolio review, your weekly patent alerts or your monthly patent alerts. Nobody expects a human to complete a review of 100 documents in 60 seconds either, right? Even if we would summarize in 60 seconds, you would not have time to review it now, right? So Qthena also has part of the tool segment, so I'm pointing here, that we call the research assistant. So this is a part of the tool where you can complete bulk analysis. For example, you can give the tool 100 documents, the whole meta portfolio for a particular aspect, your competitor's portfolio, your own portfolio of a division, and you can ask questions like these. Go through each document and list all advantages and benefits disclosed in them. For each advantage, explain what problem it solves. And then you can also instruct how the result should be outputted. This is really important to understand, so I'm going to spend a little bit more time here. There's no need to code a UI anymore or go to a programmer. Hey, I need this output like this. This is the big benefit of generative AI. Because we already do most of the prompt engineering behind the scenes. And by the way, these type of prompts are built into our tool. You can select them from a simple list. Like this is things that our users just have access to. So you could literally come in, select the prompt, select the documents, and leave. When Qthena is done, it will send you the results and email say, hey, I'm done. You can come have a look at the results. Usually within 24 hours, we promise that this is done. More complex use cases, 48 hours. But you get an email. You can go home, you go for lunch, right? And then you get a structured output like this. You could also do other use cases. Let's say you are advising as a law firm, smaller firms, or you're an in-house, you have a patent review meeting coming up, a university, everybody has this problem. How do I explain what's in the claim one to the inventor, not just a drawing, right? And of course, I mean, when we used to do this in-house, we spent like weeks and weeks to structuring documents to explain what does claim one define. So when I have my review meeting, I know we talk about the scope, not just a drawing because somebody thinks this is nice to keep. Now you can just log in, select this, and Qthena will generate an answer. Another use case is this. You could classify. So there's a lot of text, but if we just look here where I'm trying to point, I'm asking, does the patent disclose surgical microscopy and multispectral technology? You could replace this with any technology you like. And then the only thing I want Qthena to say is either yes, adjacent, or no. So it's like somebody reviewing upfront all of the documents you're giving it. And in this way, you can get a summary of everything really quickly. And 60–70% of the work you need to do is already completed. You come and do the last mile almost. Now, what's great is that, let's say you do this analysis of your competitor. What advantages do they disclose? What problem do they allege to solve? And how do they solve them? That result list you can take and chat with it. So you can now tell Qthena, hey, I got these results. I want to understand the company that has this. What would you say is their focus? And then Qthena will summarize like a future technologist to look for trends. You can take this a step further. I need bullet points. I have a great overview, blah, blah. I want you to think really hard about what would be the future products of this company. So this is important for all of you in R&D and product management, right? Or if you are an outside counsel and you want to be a more strategic partner to your client, try to do this. Yeah, when I was in-house, I would get like, hey, shall we go for lunch once a year? I'm visiting where you are. Okay, that's nice. But imagine you sent out of the blue, hey, I reviewed the 50 patents of your small competitor. Here's a summary about the problems they're trying to solve in their most recent public. It takes you no time. Your secretary, your paralegal can do it. You can tell your paralegal, he can log in, find the 50 cases, and summarize, and you send this off. Hi, how are you doing? By the way, look what I did for you. Because everybody's afraid now, oh, AI will replace me. No, it's just a tool, first of all. But if used wisely, it's a tool that makes you stand out because you can offer better service than anybody else with it. Right? You need to become more strategic to stand out from the crowd. Right? So here, I get the focus area and I get potential future products and directions. And then I can say, okay, write me a summary I can share with my team about the current state of the company and a segment about the possible future product state of the company. That's pretty cool. You know, it takes you like, what, 2 minutes after you got the results. Other chat workflows, research assistant workflows we have is claim chart generation. So you can give the tool a target document for patentability analysis and prior art documents. You provide your claim segmentation. And then Qthena will create a claim chart in Excel, because we know most of you still work in Excel. This needs to work for you, not for us. We're not in the business of locking you into a tool. We're in the business of giving you an assistant that supports you, and hopefully you like it and keep using it. But what this does, it does 60–70% of all of the work you need to do for a claim chart. It does the claim segmentations that you provide. It explains for each document you give it if it's disclosed the feature explicitly, implicitly, or not disclosed at all. Why? So every document gets 3 columns. The middle column here explains the reasoning. Why did we conclude it was explicitly disclosed? And what's super powerful, and again, because we understand these workflows, the last column is like, where in the PDF document is the support for this conclusion? Because ultimately, you need to know where in the PDF, in the original document, can I find support for this? And finally, just to get the point across here, this visual intelligence at scale is very, very powerful. So you could ask a question like this. So here I'm asking, imagine you give it like 100 documents, and for each document, it should do what I'm saying here. Go through the document, and I want to know if there's a figure or drawing, not just text, where someone speaks to a wristband device. I don't say smartwatch on purpose here. Okay, and again, you can give it 1 or 100 documents. Here's an answer in view of this document, and these are the drawings of that document. Actually, in this demo, what we had done, we deleted all claims and all description text. We just left the drawing. And it says, yeah, there's something starting at figure 8A until 8F. I can see a wrist-mounted device, so this is the answer of Qthena. the user is asking about the weather, receiving a response. I will get back to this receiving a response in particular. So we're on figure 5A. So I'm gonna go through a bit fast here. 7B, 7C, 8A. And please note there's no text here. But Qthena could already start seeing the smartwatch here. But also the way we configured the system and optimized the LLMs is it can understand connections between drawings, because it could see from this figure to the next that the arm is start to move upwards until it starts speaking to it. So that's why it basically said it starts at 8A. It didn't just say it starts at 8C. And now here, the user says, what's the weather like in Palo Alto? And on the next one, it says 7 degrees and sunny. Please note, it just says here, receiving a response. There's no text at all on this page that says the response is, right? There's no text saying the response is. So obviously, Qthena understands that 7 degrees and sunny is a response to the previous question. It can see the chat here. It sees the bubbles. It understands that this is a chat interaction. And this needs to be understood, both of you that do searching most of the time, because there's a new way to interact with documents. And again, because this is also more educational, if the current speed of the large language model development keeps going like this, and we said this also a year ago and a year before that, like at some point there will come a moment where you could just ask the large language model and tools like ours, I want you to go through these 1,000 documents, and it will just go. You don't need to come up with the keyword query, right? You can just review everything. Like you would tell, imagine you would have a human that can go through every pattern of your competitor all the time, right? Every page and see everything. This is where we're going. Imagine what this can do for you, right? And again, as I said before, anybody can now summarize a claim one. You could tell your paralegals, you can upskill people. It's a real concept that I can just give this prompt. I have a meeting, I need to explain claim one. Well, I don't need to sit down as a patent attorney anymore and do this. I just give this prompt. I can say, hey, I have a meeting coming up. There's also non-patent people. Give me a summary. I want it to be structured like this. And then you give the documents. This could be a list that anybody gives you. And you get an answer. Here's the scope. Here is the figure you should look at. The key subject matter of the claim is this. It solves this problem. And it has these advantages. If you would do this for 100 documents, you probably need 2 weeks. Probably more, but let's be a bit nice here to each other, right? You can set this up in the morning, and most of the time it's done in the afternoon, right? And anybody could do it. So not only does it increase productivity, but you can now also achieve better quality for your organization, because you can look at everything in detail and standardized. And the big benefit of these type of solutions is you can start standardizing your work as well. Because we've all been there, right? Okay, when I have a lot of time and energy, I will do it like this. Wow, very structured. But the next time, you're like, oh, sorry, I didn't have enough time. You know, here's something. No, you can always have the same quality. And because you can use tools like these, you know, you can organize your work much better across the whole firm. I think it's a bit interesting to see what happens today still in the legal industry. If you would go to the manufacturing floor of, you know, BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Audi, Ford, whoever, nobody brings their own screwdriver, their own hammer to work, right? It's all standardized. How to do things, what the outputs are. But you could go to a law firm, and I can bet with you, everybody in their different room could do things differently. Because once people leave their docketing system, they left on their own. Everybody sits around. Okay, one guy knows really good how to handle Adobe. The other person loves doing everything in Word or Excel. And the third will do, I don't know, note-taking app, whatever. Right? You're not really helping your team members to perform at the highest level. Right? And of course, just to have it said, we don't use ChatGPT or consumer product. We have a secure access to the API solution of OpenAI and Google and whoever we decide to integrate. So nothing you do is used to train any future model. It's all confidential and secure. In fact, when you send in a question, not even your email or your personal identification goes to, let's say, OpenAI. They only know ipQuants send a request and we get an answer back. And if everything's fine, it gets deleted. Okay, so we have never used any user data anyway. So there's no thumbs up, thumbs down in the tool. The only way for us to realize that something is not working well is when you tell us. We run constant checks and quality and improve on our own, of course. We have a lot of data, so we don't need anybody's data. But we rely on building close relationships with our users, right? So we will meet each other once a month in sessions like these. The only reason why we wouldn't have sessions like this is because you don't want to see us, right? But we are a large team, and offering a great service is really core of what we do here. It's not just here's a tool, goodbye. Right? So to kind of summarize it a little bit, with Qthena, you just log in. It's really that simple. We give you the training. Of course, you need to train a little bit in the beginning because, as you can see on the right-hand side, you could actually stop using some of the tools you do. So obviously, it's a very powerful, business tool, so it needs some training. But we know from our large user base that, once you do the training, 2 or 3, at latest 5 projects, as we call them, you feel comfortable, right? So we have many users, both from law firms and, R&D teams that really enjoy using our tools and see a lot of benefits. So this was, Henry, was the first part of the presentation, as we discussed about the product, the tool, what it does, what's possible today. I would go into a little bit like how you can implement AI solutions, if that's okay for you.
Okay, Tony, I would just make, maybe we'll make some comments in Portuguese.
Yes, please.
Pessoal, a gente teve a oportunidade de ver as questões as entregas que o Qthena dá, né? Eu, particularmente, a última vez que eu assisti a apresentação do Qthena, não tem muito tempo, mas é impressionante. It's very impressive that since last time we talked, Tony, the amount of new features and new abilities you have here. I was already impressed with what I had seen before, but it's amazing how it evolved. And just I will make a comment about the concept of the cockpit, which I think that
please.
O pessoal estava comentando com o Tony que além, né, de a gente ver as habilidades, né, principalmente quando a gente vê essa interação com os motores de inteligência artificial, vou chamar assim, mas é um conceito que o Tony comentou lá para trás, né, que é a questão do que ele chama de digital cockpit, ou cockpit digital. O pessoal fala muito assim tem um copilot. Tá, mas você tem um copilot que é mais uma coisa para você abrir e tal, né? E o conceito do Qthena, que nasceu muito antes, inclusive, dessas ferramentas de IA, né? Veio daquela gestão de fluxo de documentos, não adianta você ter um monte de copiloto disso, daquilo, se você não tiver um cockpit, né, velho? Pessoal, tem um copiloto, mas vocês não têm um cockpit, a gente não tem, né? Então, o conceito do cockpit, de ter uma área de trabalho preparada para a gente poder fazer isso, sem virar uma bagunça, né? Uma ferramenta mais, é realmente uma coisa assim que originalmente a gente bate o olho assim, a gente pensa muito, eu quero uma ferramenta de IA, uma ferramenta de IA, né? Mas a questão do cockpit, aí eu posso falar para vocês, do cockpit e desses tasks, né? Dessas tarefas meio que ele é pré-treinado para fazer, é o que faz muita diferença, né? Então, tem várias ferramentas, até de cockpit mesmo, de IA, mas aqui nesse caso a gente tem um cockpit, né? E aí focado em atividades de propriedade intelectual, né? Então isso, acho que são de tudo que o Tony mostrou até agora, são assim os pontos que eu gostaria assim de deixar marcados. Sabe aqueles que a gente toma nota, Clemente, e depois vai falar com os amigos, aqui você vê um monte de coisa, né? O que você viu ali que chamou muita atenção mesmo, né? Então esses são pontos que eu gostaria de deixar marcado. E agora O Tony vai entrar num segmento, né? Falando, uma coisa é o Qthena, outra coisa é o universo de aplicação de IA, todas as barreiras que a gente tem e muito dos porquês do que a gente tem por trás da criação de ferramentas como essa, das limitações e dos usos, né? So now, Tony, I've just made an introduction to the third segment, in which I commented that you would get a little more about broader concepts about
Yeah,
AI, the barriers, and many of
yeah,
the features we have, not only at Qthena, but we have many in many other tools which use artificial intelligence. And,
yeah,
and, and for me, this was very informative. Then I really understood why, when I was using the free chat GPT, I ended with non-ideal or not even close to that results. I would say I got to results which were responses created in a logic way, but which were meaningless in many cases. But anyway,
okay,
Tony, go ahead.
thanks. Thank you. So yeah, so I always like to explain a little bit how we build things. And the previous slide here said focus on quality, if I go back quickly. And I want to explain a little bit what we mean with this here at ipQuants by explaining to you the different ways of how you can implement generative AI, GPT, Gemini, and so on. So now some of you already know this probably, but I will take the basics. And for interest of time, there are many other things we could touch upon. Maybe we have a future session where we just do this, Henry. So I think this is really important. So I will focus on this and only this almost, but I really want you to understand this. So after this, we go into the question and answering section. And if anything is unclear, if you take anything away, don't get me wrong. I like selling my tool, but I really like sharing knowledge. And I think this is important for you to understand how tools are built. So if we would do a survey in this group, and I think we're roughly 170 people now in the session, I would bet 90% of you would think that when you ask the AI a question like this, does the document disclose New York? You would assume that the AI tool would read every line on every page and only then give you an answer. And don't get me wrong, this answer here right now is perfect. It says, no, the document does not explicitly disclose New York. It does, however, give travel advice for Big Apple, which is a synonym, okay? But what happens in 90% of the tools, they use what's already written here. We call this in the industry, they call it RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. What does it mean? It means when you ask a question like this, these systems, they do not go into the document directly first. They will take an intermediate step, a retrieval step, so the R in RAG, to say, hey, I have this question. They calculate what we call vector embeddings and so on. And they say, like, which paragraphs of you or which sentences? Now, this depends a lot who is the tool provider. If you optimize for cost, you will only summarize maybe half a page, right? Because remember, the more text I process, the more I have to pay to an LLM provider. We pay per word. It's a bit like when you translate patents, you pay per word. So 90% of the tools will use a RAG approach. Also, we use sometimes RAG, but everything I showed you before does not use RAG. I'll explain it after this. So this is great. Don't get me wrong. This is fantastic. If and only if you're answering a question. Because you do not care if it was written in the first sentence or the last sentence that Big Apple. You just wanted to know, does this document disclose Big Apple? Yes or no? Like, does it disclose New York? Just tell me. It's 1,000,000 times better than Control F in a PDF tool, right? Okay, so now you might wonder, like, okay, well, so where's the problem, right? So why not always do this? As you know, the context in which a word is written makes all the difference sometimes in legal. It could be a contract, a patent. It's really important for us when we build arguments or draft something that we know, for example, was it taken from embodiment 1 or from embodiment 10? When you use a RAG approach, you can't really control that, right? You just create a summary, and the only thing you give the AI is this summary. And again, the summary could be half a page or 1 page or 2 page, but people try to limit this usually in order to limit spend and to be faster and so on. So there will be a lot of problems here that the AI doesn't really understand the context from which you took the answer. And it will not be so detailed. So this is exactly what happens in ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot. They do never read the full document line by line because they optimize their token spend and also other providers in the industry. I think rarely you see people explaining this to people. So when we do this to our users, again, we focus on quality. We want them to know what's possible and not. So what's the alternative approach? It's something called context window. So what's a context window? So a context window is the complete, space a GPT has to process text. We call this context window. For example, right now, GPT-4 Omni, which is arguably still the best, maybe not by much anymore, but still the best large language model, approximately has 150 pages of context window. Actually, it's measured in tokens. Those of you that are familiar, it's called 128,000 tokens. What we do when a new model comes, the first thing we do, we like, what's the context window? Because we want a big context window. Just to explain, 3, 4, 5 years ago, there was already GPT, GPT-J, open source. Most of the people never heard about this. And the context window was just like 8 pages or something. It was useless. And you can't do anything with 8 pages. And it was not so good, of course. But still, there was something before. And in the first kind of GPT 3.5, the context window was still limited, 16,000 tokens, like 8, 20 pages. But now we have 150 pages context window, which means I can load on average 2 or 3 documents, because on average, a patent document is what, 30, 40 pages, not including the drawing, right? So for mechanical, electric, and so on, for most industries, the context window of 150 pages is great. So when we do patent drafting, office action with support, and so on, we fit every document you give us and put it into the context window and always forced to read everything. It always knows the full context. It's very easy to understand, right? If I give you a printout of an interview of your favorite football player, soccer player, right? Of course, it's a different if you read the whole interview or I just give you some summaries about it. Just think about it like that. Now, some of you here, and I can't see all of you at once, you might be thinking 150 pages. Well, in chemistry, only one document sometimes is 200 pages. Correct. What happens in our tool then? You can't use it. And people are like, what? You can't use my tool? Like, no, we tell our users, sorry, it does not fit in the context window. We don't want to compromise quality. But we know for 80% of what you do, it will work. Now I can calm everybody down. We added Google Gemini in December. It passed our test for one particular reason. GPT has 150 pages context window. Google Gemini has 1,500 pages context window. So that's really amazing. And this is what gets people like us excited, right? So even your chemists, people, and biotech, there should be no restriction. In 95% of what you do, you can use a large language model now, if it's set up correctly. You will consume more what we call tokens, but that's not your problem, that's our problem. We don't optimize for spend, we optimize for quality. Because when we launched this extension first time, our users by default only got 8 million tokens because they were so expensive. So we said, hey, if you use all of them, you have to pay like 100 euros more, But we always promised that when the price of tokens goes down, we're just going to give you more. Not like the telecom companies, they only give the good deals to the new customers, right? So today, by default, our users have 90 million, 90 tokens. And everybody that joined before, they just got more and more without doing anything. We see a world where we soon will stop talking about tokens because the price either is so cheap that we will not set a restriction on it anymore, Or, which is even more exciting, the open source tools become so good. And, with open source, you only need to host it. And this is another big problem. People now read about DeepSeek and so on, these kind of things. I'm sure you've seen this. And we're, oh, wow, open source free. No, it's not free. Because in order to run a model like DeepSeek, you need a cluster of GPUs that will cost you right now roughly 4,000 euros per month. So it's not cheap at all, right? And to run this in production, one cluster is not enough, right? So compute, you see this a lot out there, compute. Everybody talks about compute. What's all of this NVIDIA stuff you see, right? So this is real. Once you also have the compute coming down, then the world will change. I think we're not there yet. It needs a couple of, I'm not going to say any number because you never know how fast things go. But I think we already hit the level where open source large language models are great, almost on par with GPT. Not yet, in my opinion, but almost. Give it another 6 to 9 months. But if compute also comes down, then, I usually like to joke, I could create 100 little Tonys that run around for me all day long and do whatever I tell them. Like, we see a world where you will talk to Qthena while you take a walk, right? And like, hey, Qthena, I want you to do this claim chart and talk back to me in your chat. It's like you're talking to a colleague. And then you can say, hey, when I'm back in the office, I want to see this project. And then you come to the cockpit and the document's already open. And this is not science fiction. We're already working on this, right? So a voice-first kind of implementation. Because the way the context window development goes, and you can, I think, if some of you are curious, you can go read the science papers, but people are already talking about infinite context windows in the future. Let's not push it so much, but for sure, there will become a time in the near future. I think, 10,000 patents in one context window is a real thing. Imagine you could walk around at any given point, ask any question about any of your portfolio, and the answer comes back in 30 seconds. And this is how you need to think a little bit. This is what's going to hit you, because this will not take 10, 15 years, right? This will happen soon. And I personally think this is great, and then we can go into Q&A, because if you really reflect a little bit, we didn't really get taught in university how to store data the best way, or how to scroll up and down a PDF the best way, and how to arrange documents the best way. Like, it's not really what we studied for. We want to focus on the real technical teaching, on the real strategy. But finding the information and structuring the information and remembering the information takes 80% of your time today. And you only have like 10% of your time, 20, to really give great advice. You're going into a future where it will be turned upside down. It will take 10% of your time to retrieve and organize the information. And then you can spend 80, 90% of your time on drafting and arguing and making a strategy, right? So context window is really important concept to understand. There are some risks with it, because like humans, if you read a book of 300 pages and the word pizza is only in the middle, and I ask you 6 weeks later, hey, did the book disclose pizza? You're like, no, I don't remember the book talking about the pizza. So this happens to large language models as well. So for this, we built proprietary tools. We have like a warning light. It goes orange, red. Like it alerts you to like, be extra careful now, right? But we're also building other tools. This is the so-called needle in the haystack problem, right? That if in the middle of the context window now, there is a word that only appears once, they could overlook it. But there's huge research going into this, and it has become much better, right? So this is also why people still tell you, you still need to verify the output, right? And that's also why people like us, when we build Qthena, you could highlight the answer, say, hey, is this word really not there? And like, show me in the PDF, right? So we try to show you in the PDF and other tools we're building there. So remember, RAG versus context window. And of course, and we can do another session in the future, we can show you the output of ChatGPT versus a context window, and you can see, even if it's a good answer, sometimes it's not as detailed because, of course, it misses context. Okay, I think that's it from my side, Henry. I have both sessions. For me, I'm happy to take any questions. I try to answer them if there are any. If I'm not able, I'm happy to follow up later. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Tony. Wow, Tony, before we open to the audience, maybe you, Tony, do you have any slide in which you have your LinkedIn or WhatsApp, not WhatsApp, but LinkedIn contact or your email or something like this, just to share with the
I don't have actually a slide that you see like how less I focus on sales sometimes and just want to share, but I'm sure we can circulate it later.
Yes, everyone here has my WhatsApp number, so they can write to me. I will share with them your LinkedIn profile, because I know that there are some colleagues here who are even developing some tools and so on, and they would like to show you something and maybe get your opinion. So
yeah. Happy to connect. Thank you.
Great. So now, Tony, I will read some questions in Portuguese here.
Okay.
And then the ones which I believe that it will be important, that I don't know the answer right now, I will ask your confirmation and so on.
Okay.
Okay, so I will start from the last one to the first. Tem uma pergunta aqui sobre o custo do acesso ao programa. A gente tem um custo que é por usuário. Eu não vou deixar gravado aqui, né, comentar exatamente o número aqui, mas eu passo para vocês posteriormente, porque esse número ele está sempre flexível, né? E eu não quero deixar datado essa nossa apresentação com o preço. Tá? Mas o que eu posso falar hoje é que os preços internacionais do usuário estão na ordem de $3.600 por ano, em torno disso, mas aqui no Brasil, particularmente, a gente estudou uma forma da gente ter algum tipo de redução por uma série de fatores, inclusive os impostos que a gente tem aqui hoje, né? Mas o importante comentar que esse valor que eu passei, ele é um valor que está em constante mudança, então só como referência para não deixar todo mundo no ar, ok?
Andre, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I think we promised to stop the recording at this section.
Yes. That's no. I think that before we entered in the interaction with the ones, I'm just reading the question here. So when we enter in the real interaction, I will stop. Okay.
Okay.
So now I think that we have some questions which will be good for the audience in general.
Yeah.
Because first, pricing. Okay, I just commented that we have standard pricing, which is international. We are trying to get something better to Brazil, but of course it's just a reference. So don't take it and write it as the definitive price here. There is another. Tem uma outra pergunta que é sobre a questão de se o sistema trabalha com língua portuguesa. So the question if it works with Portuguese language. I have my own experience in which I interacted with the system in Portuguese. And you know that any large language model, they are very good at managing different languages. So the answer is it's perfectly.
Yeah. We can add there that we even have customers in Japan that use it in Japanese. So I think, yes.
So yes, the language is not a big question here. Deixa eu ver aqui. Bom, tem uma pergunta aqui que fala sobre o conteúdo e também a língua do documento de input. There is a question about the language of the input documents, if Qthena can work with different languages. The answer is also yes. We can work with it. And there is a module, if not wrong, that even OCR some of the documents which are not OCR'd. Am I correct?
Yeah,
Tony?
so if you become a paying subscriber, we will pre-OCR some of the key prosecution documents. You can OCR any document anytime you want in real time. When you use the research assistant, so this is all about the chat in real time. When you use what I showed you before, the bulk analysis, the research assistant, there is no OCR needed actually, because Qthena will look at every page. We will force it to see everything. So I know it always sounds a little bit weird, but at that point, OCR is not needed, but it would automatically OCR as well in some of those workflows, yes.
There is another question about if the Qthena is prepared to follow the Brazilian Patent Office prosecution procedures and so on. The answer is right now, correct me if wrong, Tony. Yes, we have for the USPTO and the EPO something which is already built for that. For Brazil, if I'm not wrong, we don't have, isn't it, Tony? It can be built in the
Correct.
future. Right now, it's not available,
Correct.
isn't it?
Right now, we don't have a dedicated Brazilian, patent law skill. People could still use the EPO or USPTO skill. It will still perform better. I guess particularly the EPO skill maybe is most relevant. But of course, if we see a request from our paying users, we will accelerate and launch a skill like this, because the tool is really scalable in that sense. Adding a new skill does not take a long time for us. We just need to see where the interest comes from.
Yes, that's perfect. Pessoal, então, como o Tony comentou, a gente não tem, né? Confirmou que a gente não tem para o Brasil, mas eu diria para vocês que pela receptividade que a gente está tendo aqui de clientes do Brasil e até de organizações, eu acredito que é bem possível que tenhamos no futuro. Bom, questões sobre essa gravação vai ser disponibilizada ainda hoje. Outra coisa importante é que nós teremos a oportunidade de fazer um trial gratuito. So, I just commented that we will have the opportunity to perform a free trial period. And the number of people here is so big that I will have to talk to Tony, and we will envision the best way to really to work with maybe collective onboarding processes and trials and so on.
Yeah.
We talked before, Tony. Comentário, a general comment for the Brazilian audience. Before we had this session, I just commented with Tony. Tony, the good thing is that, okay, it will be great, I know, but the big problem is that we'll create a big volume of trial requests. And Tony just said, Henry, we can manage that. We will envision a way to do that. So I said, then I will be extra happy to host this meeting, because I know that it's stuff, it's nice, but it's too expensive. It's not for you now, maybe in the future. No, it's affordable, and the trial will be performed soon and so on. Okay, so another question, if we have some modules to work with trademark information and trademark tasks, I will leave for Tony to comment.
Yeah, so this is very close to my heart, because I used to be the chief ipQuants, as I said, and I was managing the Leica trademark around the world. So I'm happy to say that we're right now building the first trademark workflows with the Markify team at Questel. So you can stay in the same tool, the same organization. So now patent teams and trademark teams could use the same tool. There will be something for goods and service, retrieving trademark owner data and chatting with, clearance and so on. So yes, it's coming. This first half yet. So in the next 1 to 2 months, you will see the first workflow for trademarks coming to the platform.
Yes, great. Thank you very much, Tony. This is also new for me. There is another question here. It's even written in English, in which our colleague asks if Qthena can be limited by the I think that the other question is related to the universe of information that Qthena will access. And I think that you were very clear in mentioning that the contact space is very important. So we limit the universe of information in which Qthena will work and give response. This is part of the thing, but if I'm not wrong, Tony, correct me, that it will consider that the large language models also have a broader source. Maybe it will also use external source. So can you, or
I
it will
can try to
restricted only to the documents and the context we provided to it. So, or maybe it's a mix of both.
Yeah, it depends heavily, I'm showing again, on which skill we're using. So I usually like to say, like, this should not be the problem of the user, how this actually works. So I find it very interesting, you know, everybody today tries to understand, oh, Google Gemini, ChatGPT, DeepSeek. It's like when the car was invented, people would talk about the cylinders and the brake and the fluid. Like, you don't really care today. You want to get from A to B in a safe and comfortable way, full stop. So when you do prosecution, we restrict that you cannot go outside of the document, because for legal reasons, you cannot risk that it goes into the internet and finds an answer, right? This is a legal requirement that you can only base the knowledge. But when you use it for invention disclosure generation, we will allow the tool to use its LLM knowledge, but we instruct it behind the scenes how to use it. So it will also not just go wild, okay? There's always a limitation here that we restrict it. We let it focus on the tech area. Now, another part of the question maybe is like, you can upload any PDF you want, right? You could even upload a financial report of Apple if you want. It doesn't matter. You can use the tool for anything, even non-patent. We have users that use it for contract review and so on, right? Even if there's no dedicated skill yet, you could create a custom skill yourself in the tool and prototype and play with it, right? So that's why the return on investment is instant here. Within the first 2 to 3 weeks, you will make a return on investment, right?
Good, Tony. This last comment was very important, because we know we have many people, colleagues who work in regulatory, in the pharmaceutical or chemical industry, for example, and sometimes we need to get a lot of documents and see if there is information there about safety and so on. So the good thing is, okay, the modules that we have here, the skills, as Tony commented, they are focused right now at IP skills, I would say. But of course, as we can see, what is behind the tool can allow us to do much more than that. So thank you very much. Tony,
so if you have a contract, you would just select these 2 skills here. If it's you say multi-document general document, it says, then you just select that one.
Yes.
Sorry.
Good. Yes, and there is another question from a colleague who works with chemistry field, chemistry field. And if you have any comment about, not about chemistry, but you know that chemistry, electronics, IT industry, and so on, we have many different, I would say, many clusters of technologies, and if you can make some comments about that.
Yeah, I think, of course, and I mean, I'm not a chemist, I'm a software mechanical, so I can say this. I would agree that the chemical colleagues in biotech have a difficult life, right? Because these tools probably in the first iteration work best for non-chemical and biotech. But we see a lot of progress. We have a very, very big Swiss pharma company as a customer. There's a webinar, I don't want to mention the name, although I could, but there's a public webinar out there. It's not about, talking about who it is, but what I'm trying to say is like, and another very big German pharma company, we're working together with them to make things like Markers claims analysis and these kind of things work out of the box, right? Because we have vision skills, chemical people could really benefit a lot, because Qthena can see a table. Qthena can see a chemical structure. What we're working on right now is to make Qthena perform really well. So we're building dedicated chemical skills, right, to set the focus of Qthena as good as possible without the user bothering. And we see real progress on this. And I'm very, very confident that with some of the implementations we're running in the next 1 to 2 months, we will have a chemical skill that does 60-70% at least of the work people need to start a review. So I don't see a limitation anymore for chemical and biotech people not to start using tools like these, because from the length of the document, as I tried to explain, it already can handle it. And because you can use vision skills, and because you force the tool to read and see everything, you have good quality out of the box. I think a lot of these people that got disappointed is they used the public tool. First of all, it didn't see, of course, and then it will be completely bad. And on top of that, they didn't read everything. It just used this RAG approach. So you have two things that is not in favor of a chemical or biotech person, but people didn't understand this, right? And of course, when people started, everybody used GPT 3.5, which compared to what's available today is like a difference like day and night, right? So if you tried in the past and you're discouraged, I think you should try again. I think a lot has happened in the industry. And especially if you optimize a skill for this, I think you would be surprised how well it can do the pre-work for you. A good question.
Okay, great, Tony. Thank you very much for that. And there was another question. I'm not finding it at the chat anymore. But on top of the examiner skill, maybe the colleague who wrote that maybe got a little late to this session. Bom, vou falar em português. Tem uma pergunta, né, sobre outras habilidades que o Qthena tem, além, por exemplo, de uma análise para exame de patentes. Então, tem desde o Invention Disclosure, redação de patentes, e além disso tudo, né, como o Tony comentou aí no General Document, você pode ter um monte de outras habilidades também que, entendendo como funciona a ferramenta, né, o que está por trás dela, fica bem mais fácil da gente poder usar. Tony, out of the questions we had at the chat, I think that we completely answered all of them, and we will right now we will stop the recording. I don't know, Tony, will you be able to stay with us some more minutes?
Yeah, good. Of course, I'd love to. Yes, thank you.
Okay, so Tony, once again, I would like to thank you very much
thanks for having me.
For the opportunity. Now we will stop the recording. Todas as pessoas que assistiram, né, o nosso workshop, chegaram agora, talvez mais tarde, a gravação vai ser disponibilizada e nós teremos oportunidades de interação posteriores também. A gente vai fazer agora, então, a interrupção da nossa gravação, né, para que a gente possa ficar um pouco mais à vontade para conversar com o Tony também, né? Aproveitando que nós temos vários colegas aqui, quem quiser abrir eventualmente as câmeras, né, para a gente fazer, antes da gente fazer o nosso fechamento, tradicionalmente, as a tradition here in our workshops, Tony, when we have great presentations like yours, people sharing knowledge with us, I normally ask for applause. So, uma salva de palmas para
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony.
Thank you.